Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the dusty, wind-swept boots of a Tang Dynasty mail courier. That's right, you're no mighty general or royal poet. Nope, you're a government-sanctioned letter mule with a tight schedule, questionable sandals, and a very, very long road ahead. The year is somewhere around 750 CE. The Tang Empire stretches from the Pacific coast to the edges of Persia. Imagine China at its absolute cultural peak. Poetry in the tea houses, spices on every breeze, and bureaucrats in every corner demanding reports on ink usage. Now imagine being the one person expected to deliver messages across that empire. On foot, over mountains, with bandits, and wolves, and maybe diarrhea. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. Let's see who else is drifting off with ancient mail routes tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for the best. Add soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've been chosen, dear listener, by the Ministry of Rights. Or maybe the Ministry of Transport. Honestly, no one in this village is sure. All you know is that some wrinkled man with 6 pens and 0 patience barked your name from a scroll and handed you a leather satchel with red wax seals and a firm "Don't drop it." Congratulations, you're now a Feng Qi Shi, an official letter runner of the Tang Empire. You're part diplomat, part mule, part spy. And you've just inherited a schedule that would break a modern FedEx driver. Your journey begins at the edge of a dusty village in what is now Shaanxi province. You're told your first checkpoint is 47 li away. That's about 15 miles. And you've got until sunset to get there. Piece of cake, you mutter. But your cake is made of gravel and regret. The road is surprisingly well maintained. Tang infrastructure is the real deal. Cobbled in flatter areas, beaten into muddy submiss. And elsewhere. These are the Zhandaos, postal roads built centuries ago and maintained by a proud, underpaid workforce with a lifelong grudge against wheels. Around you, fields roll by in golden stripes. Peasants glance up from rice paddies, squinting under straw hats. Occasionally you spot a wooden signpost carved with cryptic calligraphy and nailed to a rock like some bureaucratic haiku. Your leather pouch bounces with each step. Inside, scrolls sealed with red wax and thin bamboo slips tied with silk cords. One has a golden thread, which you were specifically told not to peek at. You peeked anyway. It's in code. You panic. You walk faster. A dragonfly buzzes by your ear like it owns the place. You swat it away and keep moving. Here's your first mainstream historical fact. The Tang Dynasty had one of the most advanced courier systems in the world. Over 1,600 postal stations stretched across the empire, staffed by thousands of officials, riders, innkeepers, and cooks. It was a logis, tickle miracle. If you ignored the blisters, weather, and general existential despair. But here's the fringe tidbit they don't mention in textbooks. Some Tang couriers believed that rubbing pig lard on their feet could stave off soreness and demonic possession. Not at the same time, obviously. That would be a lot of lard. About 2 hours in, your legs start singing the song of their people. Your boots, recycled hemp sandals with thin leather soles, are not cooperating. Each step feels like you're massaging gravel into your soul. A hawk cries overhead, symbol of imperial power, or maybe just a hawk looking for lunch. Either way, you keep moving. There's no room for awe out here, just sweat and sore ankles. Historians still argue whether the couriers were mostly government workers or hired contractors. Some scrolls imply a noble, full-time job with pensions and silk rewards. Others suggest it was more like jury duty. You got chosen, you did it, and then you returned home to milk goats. You finally spot your first rest station in the distance. It's nothing fancy, just a 2-story post house built of wood and plaster with a tattered Tang banner flapping in the wind. The kind of place that smells like boiled cabbage and tired horses. An old man squints at you from the doorway. He grunts. You grunt back. There is no bonding. He scribbles something on a scroll and waves you inside, and that's your first checkpoint. Your journey has only just begun. You haven't even reached the mountains yet. You sit, remove your sandals, and immediately regret that decision. You can feel the pig lard calling. Outside, the sun dips low behind the hills. Tomorrow, you'll face forests, slippery ridges, and wild animals. But tonight, you sleep among straw mats, lukewarm soup, and 3 other couriers who snore like thunder trapped in a paper lantern. The road is long, and you are only just beginning. Section 2. The next morning greets you with a lovely surprise. Your left sandal is missing, and so, one has used your travel scroll as a pillow. You groan, reclaim your dignity and your paperwork, and trudge out into the crisp dawn air. Today you're heading southwest. Today you face the road, the wind, and possibly your own decision-making skills. Your next leg of the journey will take you through rougher terrain, narrow paths lined with pines, uneven stone ridges, and stretches of open land where even crows refuse to land. The Tang courier system is brilliant in theory. But in practice? Well, let's just say you begin to understand why previous runners left behind nothing but suspiciously empty sandals. You step onto the Zhandao, that wide, occasionally marked imperial road. Every few li there's an inscribed stone stele, some warning travelers to beware of wolves, others listing the year the road was repaired. Translation: they filled the biggest holes and called it divine intervention. Your route today crosses into low hills, through winding forest paths that seem to breathe mist from the trees. It's beautiful, in that someone's watching me from behind a pine tree sort of way. Mainstream historical fact time. The Tang Dynasty developed relay stations called yijian about every 30 to 50 li. These were spaced based on terrain, closer together in mountains, farther in flat plains. Each station was required to have fresh horses, bedding, food, and messengers ready to pass on documents. A single imperial edict could travel hundreds of miles in a matter of days. In a world without email, that's basically wizardry. But let's talk fringe facts. Some stations became gossip hubs. Local scribes and low-level monks would gather to exchange imperial rumors, write questionable poetry, and bet money on which courier would cry first. You hear them chuckle when you pass, the rookie's wobble gives you away. You pass a bend in the trail and meet your first challenge. A fallen tree, half rotted and lying smugly across the path like nature's rejection slip. You try to climb musk over it. You fail. You try to crawl under it. You get stuck. Eventually, you detour through a shallow ravine, earning yourself a faceful of wet fern and one very muddy scroll pouch. Good, you mutter. Now it just looks historical. By midday, you're miles in, and the novelty of imperial service has definitely worn off. The sun's overhead, your back aches, and you're beginning to think fondly of goat herding. Goats, after all, don't demand wax-sealed documentation or carry the weight of national policy in paper form. You pause near a stream, kneeling beside the water to refill your canteen. The water's cold and crisp, and for a brief moment, the world feels still. You even catch your own reflection, sweaty, flushed, mildly deranged. "This is fine," you whisper to yourself. "Totally fine." You snack on your rations, dried persimmon slices, and a dense rice cake with the consistency of roof tile, and push on. Just another 12 li to the next rest stop. You try to whistle to pass the time, but your lips are too dry, so it comes out like a confused squirrel sneeze. Historians still argue whether couriers in the Tang system traveled alone or with assigned guards. Some records describe armed escorts for routes through the western provinces, while others insist mail carriers were expected to fend for themselves with little more than a whistle and good posture. Based on your current state, you're betting on the latter. You pass a milestone carved with a lotus and a tiger, an old Tang symbol for "do not loiter here." You loiter briefly anyway, just long enough to adjust the strap biting into your shoulder. A figure appears on the road ahead, another courier, heading the opposite direction. He nods once, solemn and exhausted, then continues walking without a word. That's the full conversation. You both understand. It's not personal. It's just letter runner life. As the light fades, you make it to the next postal outpost. This one's a little larger, a compound with a proper stay, tiled roof, and a grumpy steward who eyes you like a rotting turnip. You hand over your scroll pouch. He logs it in the station register, grunts, and points to a corner mat where you can rest. Inside, the air smells like wood smoke and fermented tofu. One of the other couriers has already passed out snoring, a half-eaten bao bun still in his hand. You admire the dedication. You collapse beside your own mat and glance at the wall, where dozens of bamboo slips hang. Messages from past couriers. Some are travel notes, some are jokes. One reads, "If you find my sandal, keep it. It's cursed." You chuckle, despite yourself. You've survived another day, and somehow, your legs are still attached. Tomorrow, the elevation begins. Tomorrow, you climb. But tonight, you listen to the wind outside and the rhythm of 1,000 dusty feet before you, all pounding the same road, delivering scrolls that may or may not be read, but always matter. Section 3. You wake before the rooster crows, which is both poetic and annoying. The station's caretaker nudges you with the practiced boredom of someone who's been waking up couriers since the invention of sunrise. "Mountains today," he mutters, handing you a boiled egg, 2 dried jujubes, and a scroll sealed in red wax. "Try not to fall off anything." You nod solemnly. The egg is too hot to hold. The jujubes are teeth breakers, and the scroll feels unnecessarily heavy, like it contains either top-secret military plans or a really passive-aggressive birthday invitation. Either way, it's your burden now. Today's route is part of the Sichuan corridor, steep, winding, and famous for 3 things: fog, cliffs, and mules with very clear opinions about walking near cliffs. You adjust your satchel and step outside into a sky painted gray. Not stormy, just moody. The path ahead is narrower now, winding between rising ridge lines, dense patches of cypress, and those oddly judgmental mountain goats that stare like they know your credit score. Mainstream historical fact. The Tang Dynasty invested heavily in mountain relay paths, carving trails into hillsides and maintaining rope bridges across ravines. Despite the primitive appearance, These were essential arteries for imperial communication, and many were still in use well into the Tang Dynasty centuries later. But of course, history's always hiding a weirder detail. Some Tang post stations had what were essentially courier-specific shrines, where runners would leave small offerings, coins, buttons, or even toenail clippings, for road spirits to ensure safe travel. You don't have coins, and you're definitely not parting with your last toenail, so you mutter a polite prayer and push forward. Within the first hour, you meet your travel companion for the day, a mule. The handler at the station simply tied it to your pouch and walked away. The mule's name is Drizzle. You don't ask why. You're afraid she'll answer. Drizzle has one setting: passive-aggressive trudging. You to encourage her with a friendly pat. She responds by attempting to bite your cloak. Bonding! As the path climbs, it narrows. On your left, mossy rock face. On your right, a several hundred-foot drop, decorated with what you assume are the ghosts of less successful couriers. You hug the cliff wall like it owes you money. The air is cooler now, the wind crisp and eager to slap. Trees thin out, and mist curls along the path like a lazy cat. You pass a lone pine growing sideways out of a rock crack. It seems to whisper, "Turn back," in a very convincing tone. You ignore it. You're too committed. And also lost. You and Drizzle reach a rope bridge. It sways in the wind like a drunken eel. You pause. Drizzle doesn't. She trots across confidently, utterly unbothered, as if she's crossing a city street. You, however, cling to the ropes like an over-caffeinated sloth. Every plank creaks with the drama of a stage actor. Halfway across, you regret everything. Not just the bridge, your entire life. Why didn't you learn carpentry? Or noodle making? Or honestly, goat herding?
Goat herding never involved bridges. You make it across, you don't kiss the ground, but you want to. Historians still argue whether these couriers traveled armed. Some records hint that a small dagger was part of the uniform, while others suggest they carried only their scrolls and a deep, unspoken desire to not be eaten by wolves. You have a bamboo walking stick, that's it. If bandits show up, you'll be politely surrendering in under 2 seconds.
You spot a small cliffside rest stop. Just a wooden bench and a faded carving of a dragon holding a scroll. You and Drizzle pause. She tries to eat your jujube. You let her. At this point, you're co-workers. From your perch, the valley below stretches out like a watercolor painting left in the rain. You can just barely make out rice paddies far below, and the winding path you already conquered. Now just a thin, nervous thread in the landscape. You take a deep breath, the kind that rattles the dust out of your lungs. You're halfway to the next station. Your scrolls are still dry. Drizzle hasn't thrown you off a cliff. You're doing great. Almost. Then it starts to drizzle. Ironically, Drizzle perks up. You curse quietly and shuffle forward. The rain is light at first, but persistent. It slicks the rocks and turns the path into a slip-and-slide of doom. Your hemp sandals have the traction of overcooked noodles. You slide at least 4 times in the next 20 minutes, each time inventing a new silent scream. You pass another courier coming from the opposite direction. He's soaked, silent, and nods with the grim understanding of one who has recently fallen in a puddle. You return the nod. Brothers in damp misery. As dusk approaches, the rain lets up. You squelch your way into the next relay station. More of a shed than a building, but it has a roof, and that's all you need. The station keeper is a woman in her 60s who hands you a dry cloak, ohm tea, and a warm smile. You could cry. She doesn't ask your name. She just says, "You look like a drizzle survivor," and gestures to the corner mat. You eat a thin soup with cabbage and rice, your scrolls safely drying beside the fire. You remove your sandals. Your feet look like they lost a fight with time itself. Drizzle curls up outside the door, satisfied with her work. You survived the Sichuan path. Tomorrow, you descend into Saddletown, a bustling mountain market, home of noisy traders, questionable inns, and the worst snoring on the entire Tang route. But for now, you sip your tea. The fire crackles. Your limbs slowly forgive you. Section 4. You wake up to the smell of pine smoke and feet, a uniquely mountain combination. Drizzle is already up, staring at you through the doorway like she's judging how long you've been asleep. You're starting to think she's in charge. Today's route is a winding descent into the settlement known informally as Saddletown, a crossroads market tucked into a wide mountain basin. It's where traders, travelers, monks, and yes, fellow couriers collide in a spectacular display of noise, spice, and unfortunately snores. More on that later. You pack your satchel, double-check your scrolls, still dry, still sealed, still containing the bureaucratic equivalent of a shrug, and nod farewell to the station keeper. She gives you a dumpling wrapped in lotus leaf and says, "Eat it before it eats you." You decide not to ask questions. The path slopes downward, winding through rock corridors carved centuries ago, by hands far more patient than yours. On your left, a sheer cliff wall. On your right, a strapped gorge so deep the bottom seems optional. Drizzle handles it like a seasoned hiker. You slip twice before breakfast. Mainstream historical fact. Saddletown wasn't its official name. It was one of hundreds of informal market towns that sprung up near Tang postal routes. These settlements thrived by serving the stream of human traffic flowing between stations. Think pit stops, but with monks, incense, pickpockets, and fried dough. Fringe detail? Some market inns had snoring rooms, sections of the building reserved for notoriously loud sleepers. There were even traveling merchants known not by their wares, but by the volume of their nightly noises. You will meet them. You will not sleep. As you descend, the forest thickens again. Pines, cypress, even a few early blooming plum trees that scatter petals like nature's confetti. The trail becomes smoother, more worn, as hooves and sandals have polished the stones over generations. Halfway down, you come across a tiny shrine carved into the untained wall. It holds a wooden fox statue, worn smooth from years of wind and curious fingers. You leave the last bit of your dumpling as an offering. Drizzle seems offended. The sounds of Saddletown begin to rise. The jingle of harnesses, the bark of market vendors, the deep thunk of someone chopping turnips with aggressive intent. You round a bend and suddenly there it is, a sprawl of tiled rooftops clinging to the mountainside, smoke curling from chimneys, banners flapping in the wind. It smells like cinnamon, hot oil, and fermented bean paste. It smells like civilization. You guide Drizzle through the narrow streets, past stalls selling everything from yak jerky to used scroll brushes. One vendor waves you over, holding up a tiny gourd filled with something suspiciously purple. "Energy wine," he claims, "keeps couriers awake and polite." You keep walking. The inn is easy to find. It's the one with a faded painting of a saddle above the door, and a man outside coughing like he's trying to eject a demon. You nod at him. He coughs at you. Mutual respect. Inside, the main room is full of warmth, shouting, and the kind of musical clatter only 10 people eating soup in one room can create. You step around a monk snoring upright at a table, a pair of lovers arguing about who forgot the noodles, and a chicken that may or may not be part of the dinner menu. You check in with the innkeeper, a wiry woman with more tattoos than teeth, who assigns you to a shared room upstairs. "Corner mat," she says, pointing. "Avoid the third one from the left. That once cursed. Again, you don't ask. Historians still argue whether couriers were expected to pay for their own lodging. Some records imply imperial subsidy. Others mention a kind of per diem system, involving copper coins and vouchers. Based on your empty coin pouch and the innkeeper's skeptical squint, you assume sleeping in the storage room was also an option. You drop your pack and stretch. Drizzle is tied outside, hopeful, not planning an escape. You go downstairs and order soup, noodles, mushrooms, a quail egg, and enough chili to question your life choices. It's heaven. Your body thanks you. Your digestive system issues a warning. After dinner, you explore the town. You pass a man carving wooden combs, a group of kids playing a game that seems to involve rocks and screaming, and a fortune teller who insists you'll marry an empress. You don't even stop walking. You find a small tea shop near the edge of town, manned by a blind old woman who doesn't speak but pours you a cup with graceful precision. The tea is bitter, earthy, and tastes faintly of licorice. You sip in silence, watching the mountains glow gold in the sunset. Back at the inn, you settle into your corner mat. The room is full of other couriers, all in various stages of exhaustion. One is already snoring. Another is mumbling about bridges and snakes. A third is sharpening a twig, for reasons best left unexplored. You try to sleep. You fail. Someone is humming. Someone else is grinding their teeth like a millstone. Outside, drizzle brays once, probably laughing. You close your eyes, pull your cloak tight, and try to count how many days until you reach the capital. It's a number that makes you sigh. But hey, you made it through another day. You didn't fall off a cliff, get poisoned by soup, or lose a scroll to mountain monkeys. You're getting the hang of this. Almost. Section 5. You wake up with a mouthful of cloak and a stiff neck that feels personally betrayed. The room smells like steamed buns, wet socks, and betrayal. You glance to your right. The courier, sleeping 2 mats over, is now using your satchel as a pillow. Again. You retrieve it silently, making a mental note to one day write a passive-aggressive poem about this man. Downstairs, the innkeeper is already shouting at someone, possibly a merchant, possibly a ghost. Either way, it adds flavor to the morning stew, which she slaps into your bowl without eye contact. You eat quickly. Your scrolls are still sealed, your mule still tied to the same post, and your energy? Questionable. You refill your water skin, check the weather, foggy with a chance of regret, and head back out onto the road. Today's route hugs the mountainside as it loops back toward the Imperial Road network. It's less vertical, but longer. You'll pass through pine forests, cross a narrow ridge, and, if you're lucky, sleep in a post station with something resembling a mattress. You are not lucky. The forest greets you with dripping branches, bird calls, and a path so muddy it makes a squelch sound with every step. Nature's version of a passive insult. Drizzle walks ahead confidently. Her hooves somehow avoid the deepest mud like she has a sixth sense for dry ground. You follow and immediately sink ankle deep. Mainstream historical fact. Tang couriers were expected to travel in all weather, barring only the most catastrophic floods or landslides. The Empire didn't stop moving just because your shoes were soggy. Dispatches were timed, recorded, and sometimes inspected at checkpoints. A delay could trigger audits, reprimands, or worse, paperwork. Now here's the fringe delight. Some post stations maintained weather excuse scrolls, handwritten notes by the station master to vouch that the delay was weather-based and not because, say, the courier had a 2-day dumpling detour in Saddletown. You decide not to ask for one today. Your conscience is muddy enough already. As you trudge forward, the fog thickens. The trees blur into shadows, the air smells like moss, and every snapping twig sounds like it has ambitions. You feel a drop of rain hit your cheek, then another, then approximately all of them. The drizzle becomes rain, not a downpour, just a steady, passive-aggressive mist that soaks into your clothes like a damp judgment. Drizzle. The mule seems energized. She brays and trots faster. You begin to suspect she's solar-powered in reverse. You pass a small Odin sign carved with ancient characters warning travelers to beware of slipping spirits. You laugh, then slip. The spirits cackle. By late afternoon, the trail crests a ridge, and you find yourself staring across a vast mountain basin. Terraced farms in the distance, a glimmer of Silver River, and the long, winding trail leading into what might be the next outpost. Your legs ache. Your satchel feels heavier. One of your scrolls has a damp corner that you're pretending not to notice. You descend slowly. Each step a negotiation between momentum and balance. Drizzle somehow moonwalks down effortlessly, looking back at you with what could only be described as smugness. Historians still argue whether the Tang mail system had dedicated paths for different message types, like urgent edicts versus routine tax reports. Some believe secret routes existed only known to senior couriers, designed to bypass crowded cities or known conflict zones. If those exist, you definitely weren't invited. At La, you reach the outskirts of the next post station. Barely more than a wooden lodge and a shed with a leaky roof. A crooked sign reads, "Stop complaining, it's dry inside." You knock. The door opens just enough to reveal a bearded man with wild eyebrows and a steaming cup of tea. He eyes you, then Drizzle, then your mud-covered legs. "You look like a haiku," he mutters, "but one that's given up." Inside, the warmth is immediate. The fire crackles in a stone pit. The walls are decorated with old courier gear, frayed satchels, broken sandals, even a scroll with teeth marks. You decide not to ask. You hang your wet cloak near the fire and sit on a reed mat that crackles under your weight. Another courier is there already, snoring softly with a dumpling in one hand and a boot in the other. His scrolls lie untouched, as if they've accepted his fate. The station keeper offers you a bowl of soup, radish, tofu, a sprinkle of dried fish, and pours you tea so strong it could revive your social light. You ask how far to the next city checkpoint. He laughs. "Depends," he says, "on your feet, your mule, and your sins." You sip your tea. Outside, rain taps gently on the roof. Your scrolls are safe. Your legs, not so much. You stretch out near the fire, Drizzle munches hay in the stable, and you try to relax. Tonight, the snores are softer. The roof is leaky, but your corner's dry. Your stomach is full, and your job? Still ridiculous. But hey, so is life sometimes. Section 6. You wake up to the soft plunk of rainwater dripping into a nearby bucket, and the distant sound of someone cursing at a chicken. It's a gentle reminder that even in the mighty Tang Dynasty, mornings are a hot mess. Drizzle greets you with her usual indifference, and the station keeper is already busy boiling a pot of barley porridge that smells vaguely of wet rope. You thank him, offer a few polite coughs in place of conversation, and pack your satchel, still dry, still sealed, still stubborn. Today's forecast? Raw, in, cold. And that special kind of wind that somehow slaps your ear and soul at the same time. Welcome to Courier life in Tang Dynasty mountain weather, where scrolls are waterproofed better than people, and your cloak is about as useful as a damp napkin. You set off into the gray with your head tucked low and your eyes squinting into mist. The trail is narrower again, hemmed in by dripping ferns and stone outcrops worn smooth by centuries of grumbling feet. Mainstream historical fact. The Tang Postal Service operated year-round, in all climates. From subtropical humidity in the south to snowbound mountain passes in the west, the couriers had no seasonal off time. Scrolls moved. Emperors didn't care if your toes fell off, as long as the tax reports made it. Fringe fact? Some couriers wrapped their scrolls in layers of fish skin or treated bark to keep them dry. Early versions of waterproof packaging. A few even swore by soaking their outer satchels in boiled ox-fat wax. Effective. Unappetizing. Scented like sadness. Your feet squish forward, soaked to the ankles. The path curves alongside a shallow river swollen with rainwater. A broken bridge ahead offers a single narrow plank for crossing. You step on it. It wobbles. Drizzle waits behind you, chewing something she found on the ground. You make it across, barely. She crosses next with zero hesitation. Of course. The wind howls through a nearby canyon, a sound so eerie it feels personal. You wrap your cloak tighter and wish, just for a moment, that your scrolls were messages about sunshine. Then, thunder. Soft, but there. A rolling murmur across the sky like a disgruntled god shifting in bed. You reach a fork in the path. One route leads higher into the fog. The other snakes down to what looks like a muddy trail hugging a cliff. You consult the carved waymarker. 2 characters, 1 moss-covered. You guess and take the high road. It's always the high road that ruins your day. Within an hour, the fog thickens until feels like you're walking through someone's breath. Trees loom out of nowhere. Rocks appear just in time for your shins to find them. You hear hooves behind you. Another courier? Bandits? A horse that's decided it wants your job? Nope, just a wild goat. You stare at each other. The goat blinks slowly, and then wanders off, unimpressed. Same. Historians still argue whether Tang couriers had to memorize their routes or were given written instructions. Some think maps were issued only for new couriers, while veterans were expected to know the rhythm of the road. You, right now, are trying to feel any rhythm besides sloshing. Midday arrives, with no sun, no lunch, and 1 leaking scroll pouch. You stop beneath a mossy overhang and inspect the damage. 1 seal is slightly smudged, but the scroll inside is intact. You exhale. You pull out the rice dumpling the station keeper gave you. It's now mush. You eat it anyway. Hunger doesn't negotiate. Suddenly, a sharp gust of wind throws a branch across the trail behind you. It hits the ground with a dramatic thunk and rolls off the edge, vanishing into the mist. You stare. Drizzle stares. You both decide to keep walking faster. You finally spot a stone archway ahead, part of an old border post, now repurposed as a makeshift shelter. Just past it is the next relay station, built into the side of a hill with low, sloping roofs and wooden eaves heavy with rainwater. Inside, it smells like wet straw and garlic. The station keeper is a young man with a limp and a face full of freckles. He takes your scroll pouch, inspects the seals, and nods. "Almost there," he says, though almost feels like a lie wrapped in politeness. You peel off your soaked cloak and hang it near the brazier. You wring out your tunic. Drizzle stands under a thatch awning, shaking like she's trying to file a complaint. Dinner is turnip stew and pickled radish, served with lukewarm millet tea. It's not glamorous, but it's warm, and your toes have stopped hurting. Collapse onto a reed mat and let your bones settle into the floor. The other courier in the room is already asleep, snoring like an enthusiastic frog. The station keeper pokes the fire and hums a folk tune under his breath. The storm outside intensifies. Raindrops batter the roof in a constant, hypnotic rhythm. You close your eyes and your mind drifts back to your village, to the smell of rice fields after the rain, to the first time someone handed you a scroll and said, "Go." You didn't expect to find poetry in wet socks, but here you are. Section 7. Morning arrives with a groan, yours specifically, as your entire spine lets you know it disapproves of the reed mat. Outside, the storm is past, leaving behind a soaked landscape that glistens in the first rays of sun like a smug apology. Drizzle snorts happily and flicks her ears, ready to walk again. You, however, peel yourself off the floor like a damp scroll and squint into the daylight. Today's stretch? Shorter in distance, but heavier in responsibility. Because today, dear listener, you're not just a tired courier with sore feet. Today, you carry a scroll bearing the golden thread seal, a mark of highest importance. Imperial edict? Border movement? A royal complaint about the quality of palace dumplings? Doesn't matter. You don't get to read it. You just get to worry about it. Mainstream historical fact. The Tang court used a variety of seals to indicate the urgency and rank of a scroll. A golden thread or wax seal marked something meant for high-ranking officials, sometimes military, sometimes civil. Couriers carrying these scrolls had priority access at stations and could override typical rest periods to speed delivery. But here's the spicy fringe tidbit. Couriers were held personally responsible for the contents arriving untampered and on time. If a seal was broken without permission, accidentally or not, it could result in flogging, demotion, or being reassigned to sanitation logistics. The bamboo latrine circuit. You double-check the golden threaded scroll, still sealed, still terrifying. You tuck it into the inner pocket of your robe, close to your ribs. You don't trust your satchel for this one. Drizzle, sensing the tension, tries to eat your sleeve. You take that as emotional support. The road today cuts through gentler hills, but with more human activity. You pass farmers bent over soggy rice fields, traders hauling silk bundles, and one man pulling a cart full of ducks who quack in deeply existential tones. You pause at a rest point, a stone pavilion overlooking a bend in the river. It's old, covered in moss, and likely cursed. You sit anyway. The view is spectacular. Water snaking through the valley. Clouds rolling off the mountaintops like steamed buns tumbling from the heavens. You eat your breakfast. Stale cake, salty tea, and anxiety. You check the scroll again. Still sealed. You press forward. Soon, you reach a checkpoint outpost, an official Tang inspection site. Two guards in armor stand by a bamboo gate, their helmets shaped like upside-down soup bowls. They eye you as you approach. You bow. They grunt. One gestures toward your pouch. You hand it over with the confidence of someone trying to look confident. They inspect each scroll carefully, their eyes pausing on the golden seal. Their tone changes instantly. One nods. The other says, "Right through. Use the South Pass." Then, almost as an afterthought, "Don't stop. Not even to eat." You thank them and move on, feeling both important and severely underdressed. Historians still argue whether checkpoints were more ceremonial or functional. Some evidence suggests they were primarily used to track courier movement and timing. Others think they were often just toll stops in disguise. Based on that interaction, you suspect a bit of both. You take the South Pass, narrower, quicker, more dangerous. Routes crisscross the path like tripwires. Birds watch from the trees like judgmental librarians. Suddenly, rustling in the brush. You freeze. Drizzle freezes. A wild boar. Bandits. An old scholar hunting mushrooms again. It's a deer, just a deer. It bounds across the path with all the grace you deeply lack and vanishes. You exhale. Drizzle snorts in laughter. Hours pass. You don't stop. You don't even sip water. You just walk, fast and focused, your feet aching, your back hunched like a question mark. At last, in the golden afternoon light, you see it, the city gate. Not the capital yet, but one of the last major cities before it. A stone wall crowned with crimson flags, bustling with traders, travelers, and guards with more layers of silk than is strictly necessary. You approach, another checkpoint, another scroll inspection, another moment of tight-jawed praying. The golden seal does its magic. The guards bow slightly. "There's a direct courier lodge inside," one says. "You'll be expected." You pass through the gate and into chaos. The streets are alive with colors, scents, sounds, peach vendors shouting, musicians playing flutes, and someone yelling about a haunted gourd. You dodge a wheelbarrow full of cabbages, a dancing bear, and a man in a cloak yelling poetry to the sky. You find the courier lodge. It's bigger than the last stations, more like a dormitory, with tall wooden doors and proper tiled roofs. Inside it's quiet, calm, almost sacred. You hand over the scroll with both hands. The clerk, an older man with eyebrows like small broomsticks, takes it gently, bows, and places it into a silk-lined box. You feel 20 pounds lie.
"You've done well," he says. "Rest. You leave for the capital in 2 days."
2 days. You can almost cry. He points you to a private room, a real mattress, a basin of hot water, even a small paper lantern. It smells like lavender. No snoring, no beetles, no cursed mats. You sink onto the mattress like it's a throne. Your boots drop with a dull thud. You exhale, deep and long. You did it. The golden seal reached its mark. You're not a hero, not a warrior, not even a particularly good mule handler. But you are a courier, and tonight, that's enough. 2 days of rest feel like being reborn, if being reborn came with sore calves and an intense craving for dumplings. The courier lodge pampers you just enough to remember what dignity feels like. Clean robes, a soft bed, and food that doesn't come with suspicious crunches. Drizzle, too, is living her best life. Fresh hay, hoof care, and someone who actually brushes her. She's probably already applied for a transfer. On the morning of departure, the clerk hands you a fresh satchel. 5 scrolls inside. None with golden seals, thank the ancestors, but still marked urgent. "For the capital," he says. "You're in the final stretch." You bow deeply, accept the burden, and leave the city, under a rising sun that seems far too cheerful for your energy level. The road ahead is smoother now, wide, packed earth, lined with willow trees. You're officially on the main Imperial Highway, into Chang'an. Congratulations, you've upgraded from backwoods footpaths to a full-blown road used by scholars, bureaucrats, performers, and people who walk like they've never slipped in mud. Mainstream historical fact. The Tang Empire's main postal roads, called Dao, were maintained by the Ministry of Works and patrolled by local military units. These roads had official inns, way stations, guards, and even tax collection points. They connected the empire's core like veins through a vast, bureaucratic body. Now for the odd little tidbit. Some odes were also marked with resting stones, wide, flat rocks placed every 5 li, where travelers were encouraged to sit, stretch, or sob silently into their cloaks. You find one, you sit, you sob a little. Feels great. The traffic is thicker here. You pass a troop of acrobats heading toward the capital. One juggles sticks while walking backwards. You pass a grain caravan, guarded by 2 men who look like they've never smiled. And you pass, unfortunately, a group of imperial exam students, reciting Confucian lines aloud, in unison, like a stressed-out chorus of human crickets. You smile weakly and keep walking. Ahead, you reach a fork, guarded by a monk, or at least someone wearing a robe and holding a soup ladle like a weapon. He blocks your way, squints, and then gestures to a side trail. "Shortcut," he says. "Faster. Fewer tax collectors." You hesitate. You smell soup. "Hot turnip broth if you take the risk," he adds. Sold. You and Drizzle detour. The shortcut is generous, with the T. Trail. It's more of a goat path, lined with rumors and rocks. You slip twice. Drizzle laughs once. But you save time, and eventually reach a tiny temple tucked into a hillside grove. The monk greets you again. You made it. Most don't. You're not sure if that's encouraging. He serves you broth, hot, peppery, and full of root vegetables that bite back. You eat gratefully, sit under a fig tree, and try to remember what peace feels like. Historians still argue whether monasteries were formal parts of the Courier network. Some claim monks often offered sanctuary and meals to traveling messengers. Others believe it was more about individual generosity than policy. In your case, the soup is real, the trail was horrible, and the monk? An enigma with a great ladle. After resting, you continue. The landscape flattens now, rice fields on either side, dotted with scarecrows wearing cracked masks and faded court robes. You find it unsettling. Drizzle finds it hilarious. You pass a tea farm, women in wide-brimmed hats pluck leaves while humming. You pass a roadside shrine where travelers leave copper coins, fish bones, and folded poems. You leave a tiny pebble with your initials scratched into it, a mark that says, "I was here. I survived this." You reach another checkpoint just before dusk. The guards are young, sleepy, and mostly interested in your mule. "Nice hooves," one mutters. You thank him on Drizzle's behalf. They wave you through. "Capital's just beyond the river bend," they say. "You'll see the walls tomorrow." Your heart flutters a little. The end is near. The final station before Chang'an is the nicest one yet. Clean walls, hot meals, and a host who doesn't grunt when you enter. They even offer you a foot bath. You look down at your calloused, mud-stained feet. They sigh. Dinner is thick rice porridge, with pickled greens and fried garlic. You eat slowly. For the first time in days, you taste your food. Outside, a flute plays softly in the distance. Probably some scholar drunk on plum wine. The stars are out. The moon glows low and fat over the hills, and the air smells of jasmine. Inside, you sit with 3 other couriers. One shares a story about a scroll that exploded. Another talks about delivering a love letter to the wrong address and starting a scandal. You laugh. You listen. You realize this job is madness, but it's yours. Tomorrow, the capital. Tomorrow, Chang'an. And maybe, just maybe, a decent breakfast. Section 9. Dawn spills over the hills like warm tea, and there it is, Chang'an. Even from a distance, it doesn't feel real. The city sprawls like a dream across the valley floor, towers piercing low mist, crimson gates wide as rivers, and roads flowing in and out like veins into a beating heart. This isn't just a city, it's the city. Capital of the Tang Dynasty, center of trade, politics, poetry, scandal, and, if rumors are to be believed, some truly excellent pastries. You and Drizzle pause at the final ridge overlooking it all. Shh. You huffs. You nod. The moment is big, but you still smell like cabbage from last night's soup. You descend slowly, passing more travelers than ever before. Carts laden with silks and spices, soldiers returning from the frontier, and one man dragging a cart filled entirely with hats. Just hats. He looks proud. You don't question it. Mainstream historical fact. At its peak, Chang'an was one of the largest cities in the world, home to over 1 million people. The city was laid out in a strict grid, modeled after cosmic principles, and divided into wards with designated purposes: trade, religion, government, and yes, postal administration. Fringe tidbit? Couriers were advised to enter the city through the southwest gate to avoid disrupting ceremonial processions. Apparently, no one wanted a sweaty mail runner crashing a poetry contest or a diplomatic reception. Reasonable. You follow the outer wall west, past hawkers selling candied hawthorn and roasted chestnuts until you reach the southwest turn entrance. The guards check your satchel, see the red wax, and wave you in with an air of mild disinterest. You step through, and it hits you. Noise, color, motion. Chang'an doesn't just exist, it performs. Drums beat in distant temples. Street performers flip sticks and twirl ribbons. Shopkeepers chant out their prices like auctioneers in silk. You try to look casual while navigating cobbled streets wider than some villages. Your satchel bounces with each step. Drizzle clips along beside you, somehow not impressed by anything. The courier route takes you through the Western Market Ward, a hive of activity packed with foreign traders, local vendors, and messengers darting through crowds like very determined sparrows. Historians still argue whether the markets operated independently or were regulated by palace officials. Some claim each stall paid bribes, fees, to local inspectors. Others insist the Tang bureaucracy kept everything above board. You suspect the truth lies somewhere, between the bean sellers and the fortune teller screaming about moon ghosts. You dodge a silk cart, 2 flute players, and the small boy selling genuine Tang Dynasty toenail clippings. You're pretty sure he's lying. Eventually, you reach the courier hall, a massive stone building with ironwood doors and a bronze bell hanging over the entrance. A carved plaque reads, "Bureau of Imperial Communications. Truth travels faster than arrows." Catchy. Inside, it's hushed, cool, peaceful. The floor is polished tile. Couriers sit on benches, waiting to be called. A long counter divides the room, behind which officials in dark robes accept scrolls, scribble notes, and bark names with the efficiency of annoyed librarians. You step forward. An official raises an eyebrow. "Route?" You name it. He nods. "Satchel?" You hand it over. He inspects the seals, his eyes moving with mechanical precision. He pauses at one. "Southwestern Taxation Audit. Urgent. No tampering." Good. He reaches below the
and retrieves a stamped slip.
Delivery confirmed. Return scroll will be ready by evening. Wait in chamber 3. No loitering. You're now officially loitering in chamber 3. The room is small but comfortable. Reed mats, a clay brazier, and a water jug that isn't growing algae. You sit. You breathe. You stretch your feet and nearly weep with joy when one toe pops audibly back into place. Drizzle, tied outside, enjoys her own moment of fame. A pair of curious children pet her and feed her dried melon slices. She accepts this royalty treatment like she was born for it. Honestly, she probably was. You doze. You wake. You doze again. Then, at dusk, your name is called. Back at the counter, you're handed a smaller satchel, just one scroll this time, sealed in silver wax. Destination, Luoyang, another imperial city east of here. You stare. Luoyang is not close. The clerk smirks. You've been promoted, long-distance certified now. Congratulations. You want to scream. Instead, you nose.
Odd. When do I leave?
Dawn. You bow. He bows. It's all very formal. You head out into the city, into streets still buzzing with twilight life. Lanterns glow red and gold. The smell of fried batter lingers in the air. Laughter echoes from the tea houses. You find a small inn recommended for imperial couriers, a place with decent beds and poor musical choices. You eat rice with pork belly, drink weak plum wine, and stare at the moon until your eyes close. Tomorrow you run again. But tonight you sleep in Chang'an. The city breathes, and for once, you breathe with it.
Section 10.
You wake with a start. Unsure if it's the sun or the lute player downstairs murdering scales that pulled you from sleep. Either way, your eyes are open, your satchels packed, and Drizzle is already waiting outside with the patient disdain of someone who knows they're the backbone of this operation. Your new scroll, sealed in silver wax, is tucked carefully in your chest wrap. You resist the urge to peek. The last time you did that, the paper bit back with coded nonsense and enough bureaucracy to haunt your dreams. Destination, Luoyang. Another imperial city, famous for its temples, poets, and absolutely massive gardens. Also, it's far, as in multiple sore leg days far. You sling the satchel over your shoulder, pat Drizzle's forehead, and rejoin the highway system just as the gates of Chang'an open with a slow creak that feels dramatic enough to deserve background music. Mainstream historical fact. The Tang postal system connected Chang'an and Luoyang via the ancient Emperor. Isle Road, a key artery that moved both military commands and tax records between the twin capitals. Maintained by soldiers and civilian crews alike, it was one of the most traveled roads in East Asia. Fringe tidbit? To mark distance, the road used carved tortoise stones, small monuments topped with turtle carvings. Superstition held that rubbing the head of the stone turtle before a journey brought luck. You find one. You rub it. Drizzle headbutts it. Now you're both covered. The road is flatter now, winding gently through farmlands, with scattered stone bridges and little way stations marked by red flags and tired cats. You reach the first halfway station by midday. It's a proper post house with 3 couriers napping on mats, a pot of weak millet porridge simmering, and a steward who doesn't bother standing when you enter. Name? He mumbles, already scribbling. You give it. He points to a corner mat. No snoring on the left. Snorers go right. You collapse. You doze. You snore a little, then switch mats. Outside, a passing storm sprinkles the roof with rhythmic taps that lull even the loudest sleeper into silence. You wake, eat a bowl of cabbage and tofu stew that's somehow both crunchy and mushy, and continue on. The landscape slowly shifts. Forests give way to open plains, dotted with grazing oxen and clusters of ginkgo trees. You pass a woman selling roasted chestnuts out of a bamboo basket. You buy a handful. Drizzle tries to eat the whole basket. You apologize. She does not. Historians still argue whether Tang couriers were required to travel with their own food or had guaranteed meals at stations. Some documents suggest they received jingfan, courier rations, but many likely depended on local generosity or their own wallets. Based on your experience, it's a mix of free pickles and foraging for dumplings. By late afternoon, you reach a small village just off the main road. A few children chase a wooden hoop, and an old man sits carving charms from bone. Yue. For lodging, and he gestures to the storage barn with the words, "Don't mind the goose. The goose minds you." It hisses the entire time you're trying to sleep. You retaliate by naming it General Screech and muttering passive-aggressive poetry at it until it finally gives up. The next morning, you and Drizzle are back on the road. You cross a low wooden bridge where a local merchant tries to sell you a scroll protection amulet made from dried garlic and goat hair. You politely decline. He throws in a rain blessing for free, which starts working immediately in the worst possible way. Rain begins again. Not a drizzle, sorry Drizzle, but a full deluge. You wrap your scroll satchel in oiled cloth and trudge forward, your cloak soaked, your sandals squishing, and your brain quietly reciting every curse it knows in ancient Chinese. You stop under a roadside pagoda, a tiny shrine to the god of the slow traveler. There's a pile of pebbles at its base. You add one. It's tradition. We huddled under the same shelter is another courier. He nods. You nod. You both eat soggy rice balls in silence. This is what friendship looks like. When the rain clears, the world is fresher. The leaves shine. The air smells like earth and new beginnings, or maybe just compost. You walk into the evening hours, watching the sun lower into a field of golden wheat. A farmer waves. Drizzle waves back, possibly by accident. You arrive at another post station just before nightfall. It's bigger than most, with carved dragons over the eaves and 3 full fires burning in the main hall. A sign reads, "Couriers welcome, bandits discouraged." Inside you meet a station keeper who offers hot rice wine, clean straw, and a bowl of pickled greens, harvested by monks. You don't ask what kind of monks. You sit near the fire, your satchel close, your boots steaming quietly beside you. And you realize this is normal now. The walking, the scrolls, the weird soup, the goose with unresolved rage issue. This isn't just a job. It's your rhythm, your story. And it's not done yet. Section 11. You rise to the scent of boiling rice porridge and what might be incense, or possibly just the station keeper's socks drying by the fire. Either way, you're vertical, fed, and back on the road, before the sun finishes stretching. Today's leg of the journey snakes along the Yellow River's edge, a scenic route with all the charm of waterlogged scrolls, and the ever-present threat of landslides. Your silver-sealed dispatch remains untouched, snug in your inner sash like a paper heartbeat. Drizzle snorts beside you, alert and suspicious of a nearby frog. She's not wrong to be. Mainstream historical fact. The Yellow River Basin was the backbone of Tang Dynasty agriculture and communication. Couriers often followed its banks, using riverboats or mule paths depending on terrain. Ferrymen worked hand in hand with the postal service, when they weren't trying to overcharge, of course. Fringe tidbit? There were with the rumors of a ghost boat, a phantom vessel said to appear at dusk on misty sections of the river. Couriers who saw it were supposedly cursed to misdeliver a scroll or forget an address. You keep your eyes firmly on the road. You've come too far to get hexed by a haunted kayak. The trail today is wide but uneven, worn by centuries of sandals and oxen carts. You pass low stone altars, old willow trees bent like elderly scribes, and shrines so small they might just be elaborate birdhouses. You leave a sliver of dried yam at one, just in case it's a protection shrine in disguise. Around midday, you spot a ferry crossing, an actual functioning boat tied to a rickety pier with a man asleep beside it, holding a paddle like a club. You clear your throat. He wakes with a snort, eyes you, and gestures at the scroll pouch. Imperial? You nod. Half price, he grumbles, clearly a patriot. You board. Drizzle refuses. You coax. She resists. You bribe her with a candied chestnut. She finally agrees, then immediately poops on the dock out of spite. The river crossing is peaceful. Wide brown water rolls beneath you, carrying reeds, reflections, and the occasional duck looking like it's reconsidering its entire life. The ferryman hums a tune with no clear melody. You try to hum along. Drizzle looks embarrassed for both of you. Halfway across, a light mist curls in. For a second, you think you see a dark shape on the water. Long, narrow, silent. You blink, it's gone. You don't talk about it. You dock on the eastern shore and resume the trail, legs still wobbly from boat sway. Ahead, the land rises slightly, forming a stretch of rolling hills and quiet groves where the wind whispers secrets through bamboo stalks. You stop for a snack beneath a tall ginkgo tree. Its fan-shaped leaves flicker gold in the breeze. A few other travelers pass, one hauling pottery, one playing a flute, and a monk riding a donkey with better posture than you'll ever have. You wave, then nod. Historians still argue whether long-distance couriers like you were expected to write reports on road conditions or simply remember them. Some scrolls suggest they kept travel logs. Others insist they had no time for anything but movement. You decide to start one mentally. Day 27. River ghosts are probably real. Mule continues to judge me. Later in the afternoon, you enter a small lakeside village. It's unusually quiet. No merchants shouting, no children chasing chickens, not even a single street musician murdering a flute. You find the local tea house. The owner, a man with a mustache that could host its own festival, greets you warmly and pours you a steaming cup of osmanthus tea. The scent is sweet and calming. You sip slowly. Drizzle munches on reeds by the water. For a brief moment, life feels balanced. The man eyes your scroll pouch. Important? Always, you say, a little too dramatically. He chuckles. I once carried one to Luoyang. 2 weeks, no sleep. When I delivered it, the minister said, it was the wrong Luoyang. There are 3. You don't laugh. You panic internally. Before leaving, he presses a small paper talisman into your palm. To protect your messages, he says, or at least your socks. You nod in gratitude and slip it into your cloak. The sun dips low as you climb the final ridge of the day. The path narrows, rocks jut from the earth like old bones, and a sudden wind kicks up dust that dances like tiny ghosts around your feet. Then, just as the last light fades, you see it. Luoyang. Not close, but close enough to recognize the towers, the grand gates, the river hugging the outer walls like a silver ribbon in the twilight. You'll reach it tomorrow. You descend to a small station for the night. It's built against a cliff, half wood, half stone, and manned by a station keeper who looks about 400 years old and might actually be.
Courier?
He rasps. Yes?
Scrolls sealed?
Yes.
Feet intact?
Barely. He chuckles and waves you in. Dinner is boiled sweet potato and salted plum soup. You're not sure it works, but you eat it anyway. You sleep near the fire, warm and dry, with drizzle snoring lightly outside the door. The capital is near, and for the first time, the end doesn't feel like an end. It feels like another beginning. Section 12. Morning greets you with a heavy blanket of mist rolling over the hills, wrapping everything in a hushed gray stillness. Luoyang lies just beyond the next ridge, but you can't see it. Only feel its presence, like a heartbeat under the soil. You roll up from your mat, stretch with a full body crackle, and step out to find Drizzle already awake, chewing on a fence post. That's Imperial property, you mutter. She doesn't care. The station keeper hands you a steamed bun and a bamboo flask of tea without a word. It's the Courier version of a high five. Today's path is short, but packed. Runners, traders, a whole caravan of monks in matching straw hats, humming as they walk. Everyone's headed to Luoyang. You're just the only one doing it, with an express delivery and a mule who walks like royalty. Mainstream historical fact. Luoyang, one of China's 4 great ancient capitals, was a political and cultural hub during the Tang Dynasty. It hosted regional courts, imperial libraries, and more temples per square mile than probably any city on Earth at the time. Tang couriers often ended their long-distance runs here, especially when the main court operated from Luoyang rather than Chang'an. Fringe tidbit? There's a legend that one library clerk in Luoyang could identify over 10,000 scrolls by smell alone, a skill developed through decades of cataloging and possibly poor ventilation. He claimed edicts from the emperor smelled like plum blossoms. You sniff your scroll. It smells like rice vinegar and stress. You make good time. The hills begin to fall away, replaced by cultivated fields, wider roads, and the low murmur of a city not yet visible, but definitely awake. A trio of young performers practice something. Ribbon staffs wave as you pass. One trips. Everyone pretends it didn't happen. You reach the outer checkpoint, a tall gate with red-painted pillars and guards who look less bored than usual, which is rarely a good sign. You bow. One of them steps forward. Courier? You nod and present your silver-sealed scroll. He raises an eyebrow. Direct to Minister Liu's office? You blink. I guess? He whistles and a younger soldier trots up with a small slip of paper. Special route, the soldier says. Courier privilege, no street tolls, no inspections. You feel like a VIP. A very tired, dusty, scroll-smelling VIP. You and Drizzle enter the city proper. Luoyang is different from Chang'an. Where Chang'an was dramatic and sprawling, Luoyang is denser, more vertical, with elegant towers and narrower streets. It smells of incense, fish sauce, and ink. Street vendors hawk steaming bowls of millet noodles, fried lotus root, and something sizzling that might be eel. You almost stop, but your scroll pulses against your ribs like a reminder. Duty first, eel later. Your special route is surprisingly peaceful. Bamboo-lined alleys, quiet courtyards, and a canal with wooden bridges built like curved smiles. Historians still argue whether couriers had escorts inside the city walls. Some sources claim high-priority deliveries were trailed by guards or assistants. Others insist the Tang valued unseen service. A courier was expected to appear, deliver, vanish. You're clearly the latter. No guard, no parade, just you and drizzle and a scroll full of secrets. Finally, you reach the administrative quarter. It's a complex of halls and towers, quiet as a temple. You dismount. Tie Drizzle under a willow tree. She immediately lies down and pretends to be dead. She's earned it. Inside, a young clerk greets you. He's about 17, has the posture of wet parchment, and wears a jade seal on a sash so long it drags behind him like a sad ribbon. "Courier?" he asks, already yawning. You.
Nod, hand over the scroll. He accepts it reverently.
"Minister Liu is in conference," he says. "You may wait here." You sit on a wooden bench that's far too elegant for your dusty robes. Across the hall, two officials argue in hushed tones about grain quotas. You tune them out. The clerk returns, bowing. Minister Liu accepts the dispatch. You're cleared for overnight lodging and return dispatch in the morning. You bow deeply, suppressing a groan from your knees. Outside, Drizzle is now surrounded by admiring locals. One small girl offers her a sugar cube. Drizzle takes it like a queen receiving tribute. You walk to the courier's guest hall, clean, tiled, quiet. A young attendant brings you hot water for your feet. You nearly cry. Dinner is served in a simple dish: steamed greens, barley, soft tofu, and pickled radish arranged like art. You eat slowly, carefully, as if chewing too fast would break the moment. Later that night, you stroll through a garden inside the courier's compound.
Plum blossoms hang heavy on the branches, and lanterns float in a koi pond like lazy stars. You sit on a stone bench, look up at the moon, and breathe. You delivered the silver scroll. You crossed mountains, rivers, ghosts, soup traps, and at least 4 minor emotional breakdowns. You're still standing. Somehow, that feels like everything. Section 13. Morning in Luoyang is a different rhythm altogether. Less thunderous than Chang'an, more like a sophisticated whisper with tea-stained hands and poetry in its socks. Birds chirp like they've memorized ancient verse. The street vendors are already at it, selling fried cakes, and stories you can't afford. You wake in a real bed with real sheets, and you nearly forget that you're technically still a state-sponsored beast of burden, until someone knocks. It's the young clerk from yesterday. He bows. "Minister Liu has prepared your return dispatch," he says, offering a sealed pouch. "This one is marked with the crimson ribbon of civil affairs. Important, but not summon the emperor important." You breathe easier. "You'll return via the central courier line," the clerk continues. "It's faster, better weather, fewer monks throwing soup." You nod sagely. "Ideal." You meet Drizzle at the gate. She's been bathed, braided. Someone's painted a flower on her flank in chalk. She is undeniable, the most dignified creature in this entire administrative complex. You whisper, "Don't let this go to your head." She farts in reply. Mainstream historical fact. The Tang courier system used multiple overlapping return routes, optimized depending on urgency, terrain conditions, and political happenings. Central lines were the fastest but also the most exposed to banditry and bureaucratic delays. Yes, those existed even then. Fringe tidbit? Some couriers reportedly maintained hidden message compartments in their boots or walking sticks in case of sabotage, robbery, or, more commonly, political backstabbing. The elite among them had secret codes known only to ministers and veteran runners. You, however, have 3 pickled plums and a mule with attitude. Close enough. The return journey begins with promise. Flat roads, mild weather, and birds who don't poop directly on your head. A good omen. You pass familiar landmarks from a new angle. The bamboo shrine where you left a pebble. Don't mind the goose village. You sprint past that one. And the lakeside tea house. The owner waves as you trot by. You lift your hand in reply, triumphant. The road seems shorter now. Either it truly is, or your legs have finally passed the pain threshold into numb enlightenment. You reach a midpoint station by nightfall, one with tiled roofs, fish ponds, and 2 bored guards trying to train a chicken. You're given a mat in the upper loft and a bowl of soup that tastes like nostalgia with a hint of leeks. There's another courier here, older, with a gray braid and a stare like cold tea. You nod, he nods. Courier language for, "We've both seen things." Over soup, he shares his story. 3 decades in the saddle. He once carried a message to the western frontier, where he was snowed in for 9 days, with nothing but millet crackers and a goat that wouldn't stop staring. You raise your bowl to him. To surviving weird livestock. He raises his back, to scrolls that make it, and joints that don't. You sleep like a rock, wet, flat, and occasionally rolled on by insects. The next morning, you continue. The central route is paved in more places, lined with mulberry trees and busier. You pass traveling judges, poets on walking tours, and a musical troupe playing lutes and drums out of sync. Drizzle seems charmed. You are not. By late afternoon, you come across a commotion, a broken cart, spilled grain, a merchant wailing about corrupted wheel spirits. A few local villagers help gather sacks. You stop, tie Drizzle to a tree, and pitch in. Mainstream historical fact. The Tang government encouraged ritual helpfulness among couriers. Runners were not just message bearers, but representatives of state virtue. There are documented cases of couriers aiding in childbirth, fire response, even festival officiating. The motto was, "Carry truth, act with honor," which sounds noble until you're covered in millet dust. The merchant thanks you with a handful of sticky rice balls. You eat one. It's somehow both dry and wet. The next night, your lodging is less glamorous. An abandoned shrine with a roof made of ambition and a floor made of twigs. You light a small fire, huddle with Drizzle, and listen to the night sounds. Distant owls, nearby frogs, and a very, very close snake that you pretend doesn't exist. The final stretch opens into plains. The air is dry, the wind kind. You spot the edges of Chang'an by mid-morning. The high walls, the red banners, the sheer scale of it all. You slow your pace, not out of exhaustion, but out of something else. Reflection. You've walked hundreds of li. You've survived weather, soup, boredom, geese, and ghosts. Maybe. You've delivered scrolls marked with gold, silver, and fear. And somehow, you don't feel like the same courier who left weeks ago. You're part of something now.
some vast invisible net that ties this empire together. No poems will be written about you, no monuments built, but messages moved because your feet did. You.
Stand at the southern gate of Chang'an. Drizzle by your side. Scroll pouch slung tight across your back. The guards recognize you now. One of them smiles. Back already? You grin. Always. Section 14. Back in Chang'an, everything feels louder, brighter. You've been gone just long enough for the city to feel foreign again, but familiar in all the right ways. Like a favorite pair of shoes that still smell like regret. You enter through the southern gate, nodding to the guards who now greet you with that rare blend of recognition and sympathy. You're that courier now, the one who went to Luoyang and came back in one piece. Mostly. Drizzle trots beside you with a noticeable swagger. She's been bathed, brushed, and decorated during your stay in Luoyang, and now she carries herself like a minor court official. A small boy points and whispers, "Is that the magic mule?" You don't correct him. The city swallows you whole. Lanterns sway from strings above the main thoroughfare. Merchants sing their prices like opera stars. A street acrobat somersaults over 3 bowls of porridge without spilling a drop. Show off. Mainstream historical fact. Chang'an's Courier district was centrally located, not far from the palace bureaucracy, and designed like a compound within a compound. Couriers had their own dormitories, mess halls, stables, and inspection stations. This minimized their interaction with the general public, and probably reduced the number of unsolicited flute performances. Fringe tidbit: there's evidence of a courier hall of shame. A scroll listing those who lost messages, delivered them to the wrong place, or confused poetry contests with tax reports. Rumor has it the scroll was displayed in the mess hall, above the soup ladle rack. You check. You're not on it. Drizzle, however, is mentioned under property damage, edible. You report directly to the postmaster's hall, a tall building with calligraphy etched into every support beam, and the smell of aged paper cling to the walls like old gossip. Inside, a scribe in faded robes nods at your satchel. Dispatch? You hand it over with the confidence of someone who only cried once on the return trip, twice tops. He checks the seal. Unbroken. Minister Liu's return. You nod. He nods. Silence. The mutual acknowledgement of a job done. He waves you to a seat by the wall. You wait. Time passes. Scrolls come in. Scrolls go out. One courier stumbles in, missing a shoe and half a mustache. You nod at him. He nods back. Courier life. Then the door to the inner chamber creaks open. A voice calls, "Runner from Luoyang." You stand. You're guided into a small office that smells like ink, sandalwood, and someone's anxiety. The postmaster sits behind a low desk, thin, white-haired, eyes sharp enough to carve stone. He doesn't speak right away. He just looks at you, long, thoughtful. You completed the Luoyang circuit in good time, he says finally. You nod. No lost scrolls. You shake your head. Any irregularities? You pause. You consider telling him about the ghost boat, the soup monk, General Screech, the goose. You say, nothing beyond the usual. He smirks. just barely. "You'll be added to the central route roster," he says. "More responsibility, longer paths, more complicated documents." You nod, slowly. Your knees scream. Rest 2 nights, then report to the scribes for the next run. You bow, deep, sincere. Every vertebra protests. You step outside, scroll free, unburdened for the first time in weeks. The wind catches your cloak and flips it like a dramatic punctuation mark. Drizzle is outside, munching on something that might be a pastry or might be a sandal. Either way, she looks pleased. You lead her back to the Courier stables. The stable boy there greets her with reverence. "She's back," he whispers. You're not sure if he means her or you. You don't ask. Back at the dormitories, you find your old mat. Someone cleaned it. Someone also drew a doodle of a courier falling off a bridge. You recognize yourself by the satchel. You don't mind. Dinner is cabbage soup and barley cakes. Tastes like home, if home was mildly undercooked. You sit outside afterward, looking up at the stars. The moon is thin tonight, just a curl of silver. Your legs ache. Your back is sore. Your satchel smells permanently like scroll glue. But you did it. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. Not because it's easy, not because anyone will remember your name, but because somewhere, someone wrote something important, and someone has to carry it. Section 15. 2 days pass in a blur of aching feet, half-slept naps, and the steady rhythm of the post-house courtyard. You tend to Drizzle, clean her hooves, patch her pack strap, brush out the tufts of hair she's been using to intimidate pigeons. She seems calm, almost smug. You let her have it. Your own body? Less smug. You soak in a hot tub of medicinal herbs and come out smelling like mint, pine, and burnt optimism. Your cloak finally dries all three. Your sandals, unfortunately, do not. You're summoned to the scribe hall on the morning of your reassignment. There, dozens of runners gather under a painted ceiling where cranes, clouds, and calligraphy swirl like a bureaucrat's fever dream. The lead scribe, a woman with steel-gray hair and perfect pen posture, calls names, hands out routes, and doesn't look up once. Your name is called. She slides over a fresh satchel, no special seal, no golden thread, just 3 scrolls bound in brown ribbon and marked with the insignia of the Minister of Rights. You glance at the names, Dunhuang, Yanzhou, and a village you've never even heard of. You frown. Is this a mistake? The scribe shrugs. Not everything important is urgent. Mainstream historical fact. The Ministry of Rights handled ceremonial functions, appointments, religious affairs, diplomacy. They sent envoys and letters to distant monasteries, border temples, and shrines lost in mountain fog. Couriers delivered these messages
Ages with the same care as tax reports or battle plans. Because in the Tang worldview, ritual and order were national security. Fringe tidbit? Some temples had scroll guardians, monks who never left the compound but could recite every imperial message delivered there in the last decade. It said they could recite those messages backward if properly bribed with sesame candy. You leave the hall with your satchel. The weight familiar now, not heavy, not light, just yours. You visit the stable, and Drizzle perks up instantly. You've only been apart for a day, but her expression clearly says, "Took you long enough." You saddle up. She nudges your cloak into place. You both step onto the stone road, early light glinting off dew-covered tiles. This time, you don't look back. Your first stop is a small monastery outside the city. It's said to be older than Chang'an itself, and the monk in charge has been waiting for a dispatch for over a year. When you arrive, he bows so deeply his hat falls off. "This," he says, accepting the scroll, "is the final piece of the puzzle." You don't ask. You just nod. You rest in their garden sipping ginger tea under a cherry blossom tree that refuses to stop blooming, even though it's technically the wrong season. Later, you cross a plain so wide you lose the horizon. You walk beside silk caravans and ox carts full of turnips. You sleep under the stars again. It's not comfortable, but it feels honest. Your next scroll goes to a town you didn't even know had a town hall. The official there greets you with tears in his eyes. "I thought they'd forgotten us," he says, cradling the scroll like a newborn. They didn't. You didn't. And finally, you reach a cliffside temple near Dunhuang, where wind carves melodies into the rocks and monks carve prayers into the cliff. You deliver your last scroll. They bow. They offer you a rice cake made of something indescribable. You eat it. You survive. Historians still argue whether couriers like you were more than waces lent to be invisible. Some believe Tang runners were expected to move through history without touching it. Others argue that every scroll delivered was a touch. Subtle, quiet, but vital. You're beginning to believe the latter. You return to Chang'an weeks later, thinner, dustier, and somehow lighter. No one celebrates. There's no fanfare. Just a nod from the postmaster, another mat in the dorm, and the quiet understanding that, in a few days, you'll be given another satchel. But you do celebrate. In your own way. You buy Drizzle a sugar cube. You sit under a lantern at the edge of the city, and you remember the road. Not the places, but the movement. The rhythm. The miles that folded beneath your feet like paper. And the knowledge that, for a little while, you were the invisible string pulling a vast empire gently together. And now, as the road fades, and the stars blink back into the sky, you rest. You feel the weight lift, not of the scrolls, but of the journey, the dust, the long hoe. Your ass alone, with only your thoughts and a mule who never quite liked you, but never left either. The city breathes without you tonight, its alleys humming soft lullabies of market bells and temple chants. The roads wind on, but for now, they can wait. You lie back on your mat, hear the gentle creak of the beams above, the rustle of your cloak, and the distant clip-clop of another courier setting out. You smile, just a little. You wonder what their scroll says. You hope their sandals hold out. The world continues to turn. History continues to whisper. And people will keep needing things delivered. Messages, truths, questions, answers. And someone will always carry them. Softly, steadily, one step at a time. So, close your eyes now. Let your breath settle. Let the footsteps fade. And if you dream, may it be of cool mountain air, bamboo groves in the rain, and a path that stretches on forever. You don't have to walk it tonight. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.